The Exit Series is produced for general information and educational purposes only and is not investment, legal, or tax advice. Views expressed are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated firm. The host is associated with an SEC-registered investment advisor. Nothing herein constitutes an offer or solicitation of advisory services. Guests are not necessarily clients. This is the Exit Series. I'm Bob Rourke. This is for founders, business brokers, M&A attorneys, and business valuation professionals. The people are in the room when the deal closed or before, talking about what happens next. On this episode, we have Scott Bushkie. He's the founder of Cornerstone Business Services, the author of Finish Strong, Sell Your Business on Your Terms, and founder of the Cornerstone International Alliance in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He brokers transactions in the lower middle market and built an amazing alliance of firms, 34 now, right?
Yeah, I think up to 36 now.
Oh, got to catch up on what I read. 36 firms that give him a view that most individual brokers don't have. Scott, thank you for your time and welcome. Tell us about your firm and who you serve.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, excited to be here. So yeah, as you said, Cornerstone Business Services is my investment banking firm focused on the low middle market. When I started out 25 years ago now, it's just celebrated our 25th anniversary. We really looked and said, where are the pockets? Where's the most need from business owners? And we saw that there's a lot of people. If you said, who can help me with a $500,000, $1 million transaction? Well, there's a lot of business brokers and franchises like Sunbelt and VR and Transworld. And then if you looked at, 25 years ago, hey, who could help me with a $100, $200, $300 million deal or bigger? Well, then you go to New York and Chicago and the bigger investment banks that say, yeah, I'll work with you, Bob, but our fee's got to be at least a $5 million success fee or $2 million success fee or something like that. But I looked around both locally, regionally, nationally and said, hey, if you had a 10, 20, 30, 50, $70 million deal, who would you go to? And everybody hesitated. They said, well, the business broker would love to take on that $10 million deal because it's maybe a bigger fee than all their other deals together because they're smaller, but they don't have the back office, the sophistication, the process, and just the know-how to handle a low market deal because it's just a different process than a Main Street deal. And the bigger investment banks could do it with their eyes closed, but they're like, Bob, sorry, I love you and your business, but I'm not getting out of bed for $1 million or $500,000 fee. It's just, we got to be 2 or 5 million. So I said, well, not being the smartest guy in the room, what if I take what the investment bankers do of bringing a high quality team, a team of 5 or 6 people versus one person running your deal, limited clientele. So we limit our clientele to, 2 or 3 business owners typically per investment banker, and run a very proactive process, a set process we call ours the Assurance 360 process, and create multiple offers, create a high closing ratio. Our closing, where the national average is, they say 20 to 30%. Ours the last 5-6 years has been around 85%. And bring all that together, but really focus on this underserved marketplace. So most of our clients are, fairly industry agnostic all over the country, but usually at least $1 million, $2 million in EBITDA up to probably 25 million. But there's a lot more in the bottom half of that than there are on the top half of that, just from a number standpoint. 5, 10 million in revenue up to 250. It's kind of how we coin the low market space. So we help them do 3 things: do an RMA or a real market analysis to help them with that clarity moment to understand what is my business truly worth in today's marketplace. It's not just a formulaic journey or put a couple numbers into a formula or into a computer and kick back a large range. It really gets you to a number. It's about the process that we go through to really dial that in. We help companies grow through acquisition, which is what I was talking about with a client right before I got onto this call, or where we spend most of our time is helping business owners sell their companies and maximize their life's work and hopefully to give them the peace of mind that they had multiple offers to choose from and move on to the next best chapter of their life. So that's what Cornerstone does. And then you mentioned the Alliance. We started that 8 years ago. And the pretense of that was, even though they're quote unquote competitors, because we all focus on the same space, I've always had more of an abundance mindset than a scarcity mindset and said, what if, and I've been the chair of the International Business Broker Association, I've been the chair of the M&A Source, and you go to these conferences for 2.5 days, 3 days, or whatever they might be, and going, man, there were some good courses, some okay courses, and this and that, but having a beer, around the bar, or having dinner with Bob, I mean, that was where the best practice sharing, because we were all, Bob's from here, I'm from there, we don't compete very much or at all. And everybody goes, man, that was the best 2.5 days of my life. And then we all go back and climb into our little silos and nobody talks to anybody for 6 months or a year or 2. And I said, what if we could create that experience on a regular basis, and not just with anybody that wrote a check, but with the best of the best in the marketplace. So that's where the whole pretense was. We're all better together than we are apart or separately. And so it gives us access to boots on the ground. We're in, 30, I think we have 36 now, just picked up two more in the last week or two, but 5 continents. I don't know how many countries. And we have access to multiple industry experts. We have over 200 investment bankers in that. We did over 2.5 billion in enterprise value last year and over 300 transactions. So it's a great way, to your point, that we get to see things on all the different stats and done deals and sharing best practices that you just can't see in between your own four walls if you're just the typical M&A firm. And so that's fun to be able to do that and bring that additional, call it horsepower, to our clients so they have a better experience at the end of the day.
That at some point, you started Cornerstone, I guess, either as brokerage or investment banking. And then at some point, you looked around and says, I'm going to take and adjust that approach or name and then build something different. And then you started looking at the best practice. What was that aha moment like? Or what was said, I'm going to take and proceed down this new road? What was that like?
Yeah, it really was one. We lost a deal. To be very honest, I lost a $35 million deal. And when they introduced 9 different brokers and investment bankers, M&A advisors, and we took second, and it's never the fun second place. And I asked why, and they said the number one guy or firm had more dots on the map. And I said, explain what dots on the map mean. And it was literally that, they had partners and relationships with dots all over the country and world. And I said, really, that's what it was? Like, we loved you guys, but that's what swung it for us. I said, okay, well, how do I get more dots on the map? But not just dots on the map that is somewhat artificial, but truly bringing people together. And I've always, like I said, I've always have an abundance mindset. I always love sharing. I always love learning, even though I've done this for 28 years now and still love learning today. And so I thought, bringing the best of the best together, we could create something special because this industry, this low middle market, it's so fragmented. When I was the chair of the M&A Source, we did a study of just the size of the firms, and 50% were one-person shops, solopreneurs. The other 40% were 2 to 5 person shops. And then that left only 10% that was 6 people or more. And, Cornerstone's around 20 people now. We're hiring a few more people in July that gets right around 20. And we're a big company, one of the biggest in the lower market, but yet we're still a tiny company at 20 people. Yeah. And so I thought, can we help with some of that fragmented marketplace and bring some of those people together to create something that's special and to be able to offer a business owner the touch of a small investment bank, but yet the experience of a large investment bank with having true strategic partners all over the world and be able to make a phone call to Japan, Germany, France, India, wherever we thought the buyer would be and have people that can open up doors for us. So that was really to try to create something that wasn't in the marketplace. And at 36 firms, we're now the largest exclusive low middle market alliance in the world. And we want to grow that to be, well over 50 and probably closer to 80 firms over the next 2 years.
A small goal, no big deal.
Yeah, right.
In the lower middle market, 5 to 150 million, specific niche or area or lane. And, a lot of brokers talk about it. You've built an entire alliance around it, like you were talking about. What's really different about the smaller, say, $20 million deal versus the $5 million Main Street deal or $200 million upper middle market? What do you see?
Yeah, the biggest difference is probably between the $20 million deal and the sub $5 million deal than the $20 million to $100 million deal. In the Main Street deal or sub $5 million deal, in many cases, not all, but in most cases, the buyer is going to be an individual. And I'm Bob's thinking about selling. I'm in corporate America. I'm in middle management someplace. I'm sick of being the corporate America. I want to do my own thing. I've got the entrepreneurial bug. Bob's thinking about retiring. I'm going to come in, buy Bob's company. Bob comes out, trains me. I go in, I run Bob's company, and now it's my business for the next 20, 30 years. But so in Main Street, when you're trying to find that buyer, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, right? Because there's no strategic plan that you can put in place. And say, well, Scott's at ABC company and he's been at that company for 10 years. And I bet you he's ready to get out. It just doesn't work like that. So it's more of a real estate model, which is put together the book or the overview of the company, put it up on a listing exchange, kind of like an MLS for real estate. But like Biz Buy Sell is the biggest by far, and now and then people that have that itch are going to go to Biz Buy Sell and kind of look and say, well, that's in my marketplace, or I like that industry, or whatever it might be, and you're playing matchmaker. So it's a little bit more of a shotgun approach and a reactive approach than a 20 or $100 million deal is going to be much more of a rifle approach of we're going to put together a deeper, what we call a SIM or a confidential information memorandum, that book on the company. It's going to be deeper. So instead of 10, 50 pages, it might be 30 to 50, slide decks or slides. And we're going to probably spend 50 to 100 or more hours doing research on, is this a private equity play? Is it a family office play? Is it a private company, public company, domestic, international? With private equity, is it a platform company? Is it an add-on company? And our analysts will do all the research to figure out, who are the right companies that can buy this, not just where 1 + 1 = 2, but hopefully 1 + 1 = 4 or 5, that there's some synergies there. So we're trying to figure out who are the right buyers, why should they buy the business? What are the synergies? And then who's the right person at that company or firm to reach out to? And we're proactively, like a rifle approach, we're going out to them in a certain order, in a certain way. And then the goal is, again, with the Main Street company, you're going to have an asking price. Because if an individual comes out, just like if the house, your house is listed at $499, a business for an individual, they might like it, but they have no idea what the value is. So if there's no value on the price, they go, man, I really like Bob's company, but I don't know if it's worth 100,000 or $1 million, and I can't figure out. I'm just going to go somewhere else because they don't want to screw up. But if it's listed at $499, now I know, okay, it's listed at $499. I'll come in at $450 or whatever else it is. So that sub $5 million deals, there's going to be an asking price. It's typically going to be a business broker. It's going to be typically an individual. And the Market Pulse survey that Lisa Riley and I started probably 13 years ago now, most times if it's a sub $1 million deal, the buyer is going to come 70% of the time. That buyer will come from a 20 or 50 mile radius. So someone from California is not moving to Green Bay to buy a sub shop. Now if it's a $40 million company, 70% of the time the buyer's going to come from 100 miles away or more. So it's much more of a local approach, regional approach, reactive, asking price, and more of that real estate selling your house model. Where once you get into the low middle market or middle market, it's that process of put together a good story, do all the research, client signs off and everything. You run a process with no asking price, and you're trying to get all the buyers to come together at one time and kind of herding all the cats to get all the offers at once. Where again, with a Main Street deal, I'm getting a buyer. If that buyer works out, I'm probably doing the deal with that buyer. If that buyer doesn't work out, then I'll find another one. But it's kind of one at a time, where this is more of a process that brings everybody together. So that's really the difference. The difference between a $20 million deal and a $100 million deal, at the end of the day, is really the fee that the investment bank makes is much bigger than the $100 million deal than the $20 million deal. Otherwise, it's really a lot of the same process. And it's a little more sophistication, of course, but very much the same process.
You've been doing this a long time. And, you take on a new client in the middle market range, and, you're looking at the owner, not necessarily at the business. Of course, that comes, you look at the owner. In the first conversation, is there an indication that you've observed that seller is going to make it through the process cleanly? Do you get some kind of vibe in there?
I do, absolutely. Yeah, you do this long enough. We've done over 350 deals and talked to God knows how many more people than that we didn't end up working with. But they really understand, why are they selling? First of all, can they clearly articulate why are they selling? Is this some kind of a planned exit? Is it they woke up one day and they're tired, burnt out, sick, and they don't want to do it anymore? Which, unfortunately, the second is much more common than the first. But is this a priority for them? If Bob goes, well, yeah, if I can get some crazy number, I'll sell. Or no, I really want to sell. And when we do what we call RMA, that matches up with their expectations. So are they realistic in valuation? Do they know what they want to sell? How organized are they? Do they know what's important to them in a sale? Some people think about money, but sometimes it's our clients take the second or even third highest amount of money because it's more, a better culture fit, or they're going to protect the employees or anything along that line. And what are they going to do next? Too many people go, again, they're burnt out, tired, sick. They don't want to do it anymore. And then they get to the closing table, and all of a sudden they go, holy cow, this is real. I can't give my baby up for adoption. I'm going to pull her back and keep it, even though it's probably not the best for the baby or for me. It's my baby, darn it. I can do whatever I want with this thing. And, just to give you an idea, we had a client that, and ironically, one thing we found, and this is national, with all of our alliance, that you would think the older someone gets, he or she would be more excited to sell. Or, oh, like I've got somebody in their 90s that they for sure want to sell. What we found is that when someone hits their low 70s, they will sabotage that deal more times than not, because maybe they aren't just mobile, or they don't know what they're going to do after the fact, or this has been their life for so long. It's like, what the heck? I'm just going to keep doing this until I die. But they know they should sell. And we had a company, two guys in their 80s, two brothers in their 80s. Neither one even worked in the company. They had a professional management team. One lived in Florida, one lived in Iowa, where the company was. And we had the benchmark at 18.5 million. We got 20 some offers on this thing. Very good, great company, nice company, great management team. And at the end of the day, we had 4 buyers between 24 and 26. Now, the benchmark was 18.5. Again, we never put an asking price because you never know what the people are going to pay. We had 4 buyers between 24 and 26, and we were going up. And the sellers called me, happened to be on my birthday of all days, and said, "Hey, Scott, really appreciate all you guys have done, but the numbers just aren't going to work. We're not going to sell." And I'm like, we're not even done with the negotiations. We're well over the benchmark of what everybody clearly wanted to get. And what we found was that they just could not let go of their baby, that they didn't know who they were without their baby. They didn't know what they were going to talk about to their buddies, literally at the country club. And they decided to blow up the deal and said, we're going to run this thing until we die. And, going back to the study that you and I were talking about, that we did, the national study we did, that was one of the biggest surprises. When we asked, what is your mindset around selling your business? And this was people between 45 and 75 and between 5 and 100 million in revenue. And the number one answer, like at 43%, was, I plan to run my business until I'm physically and or mentally unable to continue. And it's so, but when we know that, hey, they're coachable, they kind of know what they want to do next or have an idea, they're organized, this is a priority for them, they return our phone calls right away, within reason, and they know why they're selling. Those are the ones that are going to make it through. The ones that think they know it all, the ones that think, well, I'm not going to, if I get some crazy number, I'll sell. Some brokers will work with those people. We don't work with them. We want to make sure that they're serious about what they're going to do. But those are some of the key traits that we've seen from a business owner, that when they're really ready, they're ready, and they're ready to listen. They're ready to, they do what they do well. We do what we do well, and everybody stays in their lane. And usually good things happen at the end of the day.
You've probably seen the full range of behavior from the seller just before closing. What's the range of typical versus atypical in a few days before closing that you've seen?
Yeah, this is both buyer and seller. We always say no one gets any smarter or any more rational the closer you get to closing. So you want to set clear expectations up front of what makes sense and when they're thinking objectively, because the closer you get, again, this is, a buyer's going to put millions upon millions of dollars on the table, but the seller, it's their life's work. They get one chance to do this. It's their legacy. It's their giving up their baby for adoption. So yeah, they're going to be emotional. They're going to be, little things they can blow up over little things. And that's why we try to eliminate as many surprises as possible by really setting clear expectations up front with our seller, and also with the buyers. We're putting together the letter of intent and everything else to try to get as much into the LOI as humanly possible. So there's not a lot of negotiations, as you get closer to the closing. But yeah, people are excited. They're nervous. They're scared. It's not just, moving like this. It's the roller coaster effect of, the closer you get to closing.
Yeah, the oscillator for sure.
Yeah.
There's, I think, an expectation of some description of, what do you see in the seller when they close, and when you look at the seller and the wire is there, what do you see visibly in that seller?
Yeah. I think the first wave of emotion is just this relief of stress that they've been carrying this burden. They've been carrying this bag. They're holding the torch for usually decades. And they finally were able to say, not someone paid me for everything I built up, and they've got the money's in the bank, and just this, I can take a breath. I can relax. And in fact, just to give you a story of how real that really is, We had a gentleman out in New Jersey that we were working with several years ago, and his blood pressure was like double what it should have been. It was 200 over. I mean, it was not good. He was on all kinds of blood pressure medicine, and he had a successful company, extremely profitable, very good. It wasn't like he was stressed out because the company wasn't doing well. It was doing great. We sold the company, had multiple offers, and he tried everything. He was taking multiple kinds of medication. Nothing was helping him. Couldn't sleep at night. And he sold his company, and within 6 months, his blood pressure came down, and he was all of his medication. And his doctor said, if you don't sell this company, it's going to kill you. It's absolutely going to kill you, because he was just a type A personality. He was just driven hard. And so all of a sudden he had his life back. He had a bunch of money in the back. He had his life back. He's still alive today, after 10 years later or so. And I think you first see this sense of relief, like, oh my gosh, it really happened, because they want it to happen, but they're still waiting for the other shoe to drop, that something happens, because they hear the stories, and it does happen where you're right up to closing and then something falls apart. But it got done. And then I think it goes a little, they're excited. And then I think it goes into a little bit of intrepidation of, okay, now what am I going to do? Like, what's next? And that's why we talk about early with our clients about what does that next chapter of your life look like? Where are you going to find purpose? And I was able to interview Bo Burlingham for a movie that I produced with another film director, and his whole book and his whole talk was around people, even those that do sell, have this 70% had this seller remorse or regret, and so much of it came from, they go to a cocktail party. Like, the worst thing that could happen is they go to a cocktail party after they sold their company and go, well, Bob, what do you do now? And they're like, well, I used to own Rourke Enterprises, and I used to do this, and I used to do that, and now I play golf every once in a while, and they don't know what they're next. So it's all about, as business owners, we're all about serving. We're serving our customers, serving our employees, serving whoever, and we have that sense of purpose. And when you lose that sense of purpose, they got to figure out what that is. It could be, for some, maybe starting another company. We see that a lot with Gen X. They're kind of selling one in their 40s, early 50s, and taking a year or two off and then doing it again, kind of like a boomerang generation. The boomers are selling once and they're retiring, is what we typically find. But I think, it's some of those things that they kind of go through this, nervousness, relief, excitement, and then interpretation. And it's something that they really need to spend time on, because if they don't know what they're going to do next, like you said, you read my book, and in the workbook, we have a section just on, what's next. And so we have people do, write out their bucket list. So what are the top 10 things that you want to do that you couldn't do because you didn't either have the time or the money, and now you have the gift of both. But that'll get you through the first year or two. But after that, what's really the purpose of your life? And that's where we have them write, what do they want to be remembered for? Or almost like writing their eulogy. Like, at the end of the day, what are people going to say about Bob? He was the best business owner, but his kids didn't even know him for the last 20 years of his life. Or he was the best grandpa, and he did this, and he gave to the Little League in his church, or what. Again, there's zero right or wrong. It's just, what do you want to be remembered for? Because a lot of entrepreneurs just get caught up. They're in the rat race, and they're in the hamster wheel, and they're just going around and round and round, and like, look how much money I'm making more. I got to grow. I got to buy another company. I got to keep growing. It's like, at one point, what are you doing it all for? And that's what the national study said. Why are they doing this? When they would sell is when they knew that they truly had financial freedom, that they could live their ideal lifestyle. But less than 40% ever had got any kind of an RMA or valuation done ever in their life, let alone in the last year or two. So nobody knows when they could get out or when they can't get out, and they just get stuck because they don't know what they don't know. And 32% in this national study said, I don't even know where to start or who to trust. And so they're just stuck. And that's why we work with so many business coaches and financial advisors and other trusted advisors, because if we can help educate them to have the conversation with the client, and they start to bring us in earlier, someone like us in earlier, it just gives that business owner, he or she, such a better chance of truly selling the company and going on their terms, versus, as we talked earlier offline, just getting that unsolicited offer when you're burnt out and going, oh my gosh, somebody validated my life's work. And you find out after you sold the business that they stole your company for half of what it's worth, or if not even less. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that you see, right after the sale. And it's, It's very, and I think we'll talk about this later, but it's so different. Those that truly plan and are ready for this and proactively moving through this process, then those just wake up one day and it's not fun anymore, burnt out, sick, tired, and they're reactive to this whole process. And they haven't met with their team and they don't know how much they need to live their ideal lifestyle. And they just pray to God that maybe it sells, and they pay full boat in taxes and pray to God that they can live off of what they have. And it's so sad because we've seen people that sell for millions of dollars, but they never take the time to sit down with a quality financial advisor and tax people and everybody else. And they just, they live a very frugal lifestyle. Anytime they spend any kind of money, they feel guilty about it. And then they die with millions of dollars in the bank. And they go, oh man, they lived a life of a $50,000, $75,000 wage when they could have lived a $300,000 lifestyle. And they just never really understood it. Timing is so important. I know this isn't one of your questions, but it's so important with timing because most people hang on too long. They don't sell too soon. And again, it's because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're going to do next. They don't know who they are without the company. You could see why that would happen. But when they do figure it out, when they figure out their numbers, and even if they can get a couple of years on their life, and the story I tell, it's a personal one, and it's my dad. He was not an entrepreneur. He worked in corporate America all his life. He worked for John Deere in Little Horicon, Wisconsin, and for 28 years, and everybody retires at 62, and he was 60. When he saw an opportunity, he kind of found his value, and working with HR said, hey, I heard you want to get rid of some of the old guys and get some new guys in for less salaries and fresh blood. And what would you do to get me out of here? And he found out that he could get, instead of 20, if he ended today, he would have got 20 years of pension. He was able to get 30 years of pension. The 2 years he would have otherwise got a year severance and plus his vacation paid out, which was several weeks. So he basically got out 2 years early for about a half a year's worth of salary, for a real good trade. And he found out that he could live his ideal lifestyle 2 years earlier. Well, thank God he did, because in those 2 years, he was able to go golf with his buddies, traveled, all around where he wanted to go, come and see the kids, the grandkids, do all the stuff that he wanted to do, because he had worked literally from the age of 10 on. My grandpa was not a very nice guy. Went to the war, came back, was not a good guy. So he was the youngest of five, from 10 to 16, through high school, college, everything else. He worked his whole life. So he finally got done 50 years of work at 60, came home one day to my mom. She said, how was work? He's like, oh, I retired today. She's like, what? You're thinking about retiring? He's like, no, I'm done. I'm never going to work again. They never talked about it. My mom was quite surprised. And he got to do all those things I talked about. And thank God he did, because at 62, 10 days before my wedding, when he was supposed to retire, he had a massive stroke on the golf course. He felt something on hole 7. By hole 9, he couldn't get out of the golf cart. And flight for life down to Madison, wasn't supposed to live through it, but his mind was never the same. His body was never the same. It took him a year to learn how to walk again with a cane, where he was just a great athlete. He had coached, did ref for 30, 40 years of his life. And his mind, he was the master scheduler. He'd do everybody's taxes in Horicon, and he couldn't balance his own checkbook. He couldn't, you said, here's a circle, draw me 2 o'clock on his clock. He couldn't do it, the first year. That's how messed up his mind was. So he lived for 5 more years, not happy, and then died of cancer. So if he would have gone down the path of wait till someone talks to me, or I'll wait till I'm no longer able to do this, he would have worked from 10 to 62 to have a major stroke, get cancer, and die. And that's no way for any of us to go through life. So at least he got 2 years, died way too early. But that's where what we talk about is that clarity moment, with CPA, the discovery gate with EPI, of not just doing a wide range or doing a computer model, but sitting down with our RMA and figure out what is your company truly worth and what could you do to enhance the value. We'll not only give you what it's worth, but what are the 2 to 3 things you could do, the biggest levers to move that company forward and get it to where you want to be. But once you understand, we said that we kind of like a 3-legged stool, what's your real number, your life, and then what's your net number? What are you going to net out after taxes and fees and debt? And then what's your lifestyle number? What do you need to fill that gap? And if the wealth gap is 0 or you fill the wealth gap, well, then why wait? But if there's a wealth gap, well, hey, my net number's, 10, I need, my lifestyle number is 12. Well, I got a $2 million life, wealth gap. Well, I can either lower my lifestyle down to 10 and know what that looks like because I'm just done. Or I can say, nope, now I got a $2 million wealth gap. I know what to do. And then work with a business coach like Cultivate or Scaling Up or somebody to help grow the business. And then we update the evaluation. And now they're making a well-informed decision of going to market. And that really helps a lot of people because it can give them back maybe 5 years of their life. And unfortunately, you never know when bad things are going to happen to you. And I just spoke to a national group last week over in Detroit, and the person that puts on the event, I was talking to her. She's late 40s, early 50s, and her husband, great shape. They're both D1 athletes. Went to the doctor and came back with brain cancer. He's got 2 years to live. And you hear that story a lot more than you want to. And so that's our goal, is to give our clients, give these business owners that are these creators. They birthed these things out of nothing, created all these jobs, help build up these communities, to give them as much time to build, make an impact and build memories with their family and friends as humanly possible. And if they don't have that clarity moment, if they don't know what that RMA is, then they wait too long, and then all of a sudden the business drops off, or they don't sell it at all, and now their legacy's gone. All the employees lose their jobs, and now they're not living their lifestyle. And so it's so important to have that that upfront conversation with your trusted advisor.
The legacy risk issues profound, and the advent of concierge medicine, I think, is a great way for some of these people to consider to offset that risk. And
Right.
I don't think it's widely applied, but I
Correct.
think it would matter a lot. And when you're talking to that business owner, and they've closed in the middle market area, and you talk to that business owner after the close and go, what surprised those sellers the most about that whole closing process, you think?
Yeah, sometimes it's well, the due diligence process is always deeper than what they thought it was going to be. You say, it's not the most glamorous image, but it's like going to get the old colonoscopy. That's about how deep they're gonna go into your business and everything about you and your company.
Yeah.
But so I think that's one. And then for us, our average is 6 to 8 months. So some people think it went faster than it thought. Some people thought it took a lot longer than they had thought, that was just going to be kind of an event, and it's not. It's a process. I think with our clients, the number of offers that they get, be able to get 8 or 10 offers on their company, they got to choose who their success was, I think is good. And one thing that I think is surprising to them, again, when they don't know what that purpose is after the fact, is they go from this VIP, this very important person, of people will call them all the time, asking them questions and taking them out for lunch to try to get their business or whatever it is. They go from a VIP to what we call a PIP, which is a previously important person. And they're not ready for, like, why is my phone working? Well, it's 10 o'clock and no one's called me yet. Why? This thing must be broke. I got to go get my phone fixed. So I think those are some things too, that, your phone stops ringing. And that's where it really comes down to understanding what that next chapter looks like, because most just know that I want to get out of this, kind of burnt out, tired, and don't want to do this anymore, but they really don't spend time. Or they'll say, I'm going to golf. Well, I'm telling you right now, you can only golf so many times a day before your shoulders start to ache or your arms are ready to fall off. So if golf is their answer, they'll usually, they won't be happy in about a year to 2 years later.
You speak, I think, frequently in front of business owner groups or industries. And so you have that cohort in the audience. So you've made your presentation and so on. I guess, what are the typical questions that come across from that audience after you take and make a point about pre-exit planning?
Yeah, I think, some of the questions that get asked are, if I could do 1 or 2 things, what would make the biggest difference in helping me, sell my business and, go out on my terms. And I think that, it's very high level, but it's really, we talk a little bit about them, but just to capture them is, number one, is you've got to plan sooner. If you wake up one day and want to sell tomorrow, we get that all the time and we can do that, but you're leaving so much money on the table, or you might not be saleable at all. So getting out, even if it's a year earlier, just taking a year to kind of get organized and plan a few things is helpful. And then 2, it's all about building the right deal team around you. This is not something that you should be doing yourself. And I'm not saying that because obviously, yes, I'm biased, and it's great if you call us, but I can tell you, I'll give you an analogy, and then I'll give you a case study or two that, and it's not just the investment banker, the M&A advisor, but it's also the M&A attorney. It's also the right tax people. It's also the right financial advisor. It's those people all coming together to help you maximize this once in a lifetime chance you have of maximizing your life's work. And people that do it themselves, and in the national study, we found that, the traits that make a business owner great. If I ask people in a crowd, like what traits make a business owner great, they'll usually come up with grit, persistence. I could do this myself, complex thinking, problem solver, be able to pivot, and react to different situations. And it's all of those personalities that make them a terrible seller because they're like, well, geez, Bob, I know my business better than anybody else. Why should I work with you? I'm unique. I'm different than everybody else. I'll call these buyers. Well, these buyers, it's like, I'm a really good tennis player. I might be a world-class athlete, but I go out to your country club and I start, after a couple of drinks, I start talking to your club pro, and he or she maybe they never played tennis, but they play a lot of golf and they know that course. They played hundreds, if not thousands of times. They know how the greens lie. They know where all the water hazards are, all the bunkers, everything else. And I think because I'm a world-class athlete in tennis, that I'm going to beat your club pro in golf. First time out, never picked up a club. And everybody like, of course, there's no way the club pro is going to win every single time because you've never even touched a club, let alone, played a bunch of times. But that's the same thing with business owners, that you're going up against someone that what they do for a living is buy companies. And they buy companies. Their job is to buy for as little as possible. And even on top of that, put as much risk back on you, the seller, that if the deal doesn't work out, you're taking even a bigger hit on value. And to give you an idea on that, I'll give you two quick case studies. One was a deal we did a couple of years ago, and it was a family-owned business, regional market leader in their region. And they had come to us through their trusted advisor and said, hey, we've got two buyers interested in us. We want to sell. We're looking to retire and do something a little different, relax. And been doing it for a long time. And so we met with them on a Friday. Well, then over the weekend, they're like, you know what? I've got 40 years experience in this space. I've sat on the national boards of my industry. I know the players. I've got the two biggest buyers already at the table knocking on my door saying, I want to buy your company. Why should I pay Cornerstone anything? Why would that be? Why would I want to have a cost to me selling my company when I could do it myself? So they called me on Monday and said, hey, guess what? We're going to do it ourselves. We got this figured out, we think. But we still want you to do an RMA. We want you to do a real market analysis. So I think they could prove to me that they could get more than what market was because they're really smart people. And he was brilliant. They are smart as heck in their space. So it takes about 3 weeks to do the RMA. We expedited a little bit. So the first offer came in while we were doing the RMA. It came in at $31 million, 26 at close, and 5 in a seller note over 5 years. Next week we finished our RMA. It came in at $43.3 million, and which was quite a jump from the 31 and the 26 at close. But they said, wait. That was the second biggest buyer. Now we've got the biggest buyer coming in. They've got the most money. They've backed by private equity. They have a mandate to grow through acquisition. They've already come to our place twice and taken us out for 2 amazing dinners, talked about how great we are, how smart we are, how many synergies there are between our firms. And they're going to come with a huge number because they're the biggest, they're the best. They love us. They came in the following week at $25 million. And we said, can we please run our process where we create POMO, where we create the power of multiple offers, and we're getting multiple buyers, competing, getting that urgency and scarcity and competitive nature. And they finally said, yeah, you got a short leash, go. So we went, and in 10 days, this is not the normal, 10 days is quick, but in 10 days, we had a signed letter of intent for $51.3 million. Only because we created visible competition. We created urgency and scarcity. And it wasn't one of those two buyers. It was a different buyer that we brought to the table. And the ironic thing is that buyer came to them about 90 days earlier, or 9 months earlier, and said, hey, Bob, we want to buy your company. They said, hey, we're actually thinking about selling. Great. And they said, great, we want to put an offer in. And the market was kind of 3.5 to 5 times EBITDA. It wasn't huge multiples on that particular industry. And they said, we have a mandate with our private equity group that we legally can't pay more than a 5 multiple, even if we wanted to. And Bob, you've got a great company. We love your company, but we can't pay more than a 5 multiple. So that would have came out about $30 million. So without us, 25, 30, and 31, with an investment banker, with a team, with an M&A attorney, with the financial advisor, with the tax people, we all worked together to create a $51.3 million deal for that client and closed 45 days later. So that's the big piece. And then just another quick one we just did 6 months ago, a little bit smaller deal, but again, same scenario where the buyer, the owner was working with a buyer. They negotiated from $5 million up to like $10 million. But from $5 million to 10, it was all earnout. And the higher the number, the more unlikely the earnout was, or the more growth they had to do. So she's like, look, it's really probably a $5-6 million deal. we're ready to sell. We want to retire. And their financial advisor just saw me speak at a national conference of theirs. So he's like, "Hey, can you come speak to this couple? The woman owns a great company, and I think I don't know if they're getting full value." So we talked with them. We agreed to do an RMA very quickly. We did the RMA, the real market analysis, came back at about $10 million. But we said, look, we think we can get 75 to 90% cash at close, not 50% cash at close. And we think there's a good chance we can get more than the $10 million. But $10 million is what your peers have sold for, somewhere in that range. So she said, hey, if I can get 50% more cash at close, I'm in. Let's take the risk and go do that. So she's like, well, what do I do with this one buyer? I like them. They're good people. I don't want to lose them. And I said, look, they're not going to go anywhere. They always threaten to leave. They don't leave, been our experience. But I said, just send them an email going, hey, appreciate you guys. We like you guys. Appreciate your time. I get one chance to do this and do it right. My financial advisor introduced me to Cornerstone. I'm going to bring them in. They're going to contact you, and they're going to run a process, and they'll be in touch. And in the last call before she sent that email, they said, look, we went from 5, we're up to 10. 10 is the highest we can go. We cannot pay a penny over 10 million. And kind of the walkway close, like, hey, Bob, if you don't like this deal, we're out of here. See ya. And hopefully they go, oh, no, wait. We'll do 10 million. Well, she sent the email. In 5 minutes, that phone rings. And on the other end of the line is the buyer. And after they just said they can't pay a penny more, the first thing they said was, what's it going to take for you not to sign with Cornerstone? How much more money do you want not to sign with Cornerstone? And she's like, thank God I signed with you guys. And we brought 9 other offers to the table. They stayed at about 10.5 million. They upped their cash at close a little bit, but we ended up doing the deal at 14 million and getting over 9 million cash at close. So they got 40% more and almost 100% more cash at close. And that's because we created this POMO, the power of multiple offers. If it was just one buyer at a time, she probably would have sold for $5 or $6 million. And so that's, so the things that people can do is because people are like, oh, I'm going to spend all my effort on building up this thing and making it shiny, making it better and better and better. And you can do all those things. But if you run, at the end of the day, if you run the wrong process or no process at all, you are going to leave millions, if not tens of millions of dollars on the table. And that's what people are surprised at, that they think, I'll do it myself, or, I'll wait for an unsolicited offer to come in. And anybody doing 5 or 10 million in sales right now has probably got an unsolicited offer within the last week or two, at least the last month, from somebody looking to buy their company, because they know that as a buyer, if they can get to you, the business owner, before you get to someone like us, the investment banker, they are going to get a better deal. And it's proven out 6 years in a row. Every single time we've gotten a higher, better value than what the unsolicited offer has been. And so I think those things, that they do so many things right, but just one mistake of saying the wrong thing, putting an asking price out there, setting a ceiling, just literally one sentence could cost them tens of millions of dollars. And they're surprised that it's such cutthroat. So again, going back to all the traits that make a business owner great, of pivoting and reactive thinking and solving problems. When you get one chance to sell your company and you're going up someone that looks at 3,000 to 5,000 deals a year and they buy 5 to 6, you got to have the team behind you, because otherwise you're going to lose 100% of the time. And that's where I think that, a buyer will spend, typically on a low mid market deal, they'll spend anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million on diligence, because they got to make sure that they're getting what they're getting, and they're bring people in to knock the price down even after they sign an letter of intent or whatever else it might be. And that's where the team is so important, that they have a good team of specialists around them at the time of that sale.
Across the alliance that you've built, the 36 and soon to be counting firms, you're probably seeing patterns that no single brokerage firm will ever have an opportunity to see during their time frame. What's that post-close pattern that's of most concern for you? Does it repeat regularly, and regardless of how hard you guys work to try to remediate it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you see is most people get out of business for a personal issue. Again, burnt out, tired, don't want to do any more, sick. And so they're getting away from something, but they don't know what they're going to. And they're excited because they got stuff on their bucket list. But it's that there's stuff that they want to do and fun they want to have, and they should have all the fun and take the time to do all those things. But after that, where's the meaning in their life? Where's the purpose in their life? Where's the passion in their life? Because some people think, oh, I've done that for so many years, I can turn off the passion of my life and I'm just going to relax. Well, I can tell you as an entrepreneur, that does not happen. That absolutely does not happen. You still have that energy and that excitement that's got to go somewhere. And that's where, when it doesn't and people don't know, they get super depressed. I mean, and that's where people can really, it almost cost themselves to get sick and die because there's like, oh, there's nothing left for me. I've had the good life and I've traveled the world in the last 2 years, and now I'm just going to sit on my rocking chair until I die. And that's scary. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is just really helping the owner, whether, whoever the trusted advisor is, or if you're a business owner listening to this, is really spend the time of thinking like, what do you want to be remembered for? We have, that's part of the exercises that we have in our workbook is almost like writing your eulogy. When it's all said and done, what does Bob want people to say about Bob? That was he the best business owner, but his kids didn't like him, didn't know him. Did he die too soon because he was, way out of shape because all he did was focus on the business? Did he, did he give back to the community? Was he a great grandpa? Was he a great dad? What? Again, there's zero right or wrong. It's just what do you want people to say about you? Because everybody gets caught up in the money, money, money wheel. And I got to be bigger. I got to be more. I got to be, more and more, better, better, better. At the end of the day, why are you doing it? And I think that's why to peel back that onion, why am I doing this? What does success look like? What do I want to do next? And I think that's why Bob, asking these questions about people preparing psychologically and what are they going to do next and getting some of these mistakes out on the table, I think is absolutely amazing because I do almost a podcast a week, but so much of it is around how to build value, how to maximize the value and all those different things, which is super important. But it's so much about what are you going to do next that people don't talk about. And it's almost like, you have someone die that's close to you, during that time, from dying to funeral, you got so many people going and the world's going. It's like, yeah, you're caught up in the next week or two. People are calling you and saying their story and dropping off food. But a month from now, when nobody's calling you anymore, they're back to their normal life and the food's not getting dropped off anymore. And you still lost your spouse or your brother, dad, mother, whatever it is. That's when you need to have that purpose and passion and the emotion that I have, because obviously I've not sold my company yet, but the emotion that I had that I think is almost like the opposite, but is when we had our first kid, and you prepare and you plan, you read books and everything else, you get the baby room all set up, and you have the baby and you're in there and you're holding it, and then the nurse takes it back and you're this and you're that, and you sleep and the nurse takes it, and they say, okay, it's time to get the heck out of the hospital. And you take that baby for the first time and you put it in your little thing and you put it in the back of the car and you're driving home going, what in the hell do we do now? We can't just run and go here. We can't go there. It's like, what did we do? And I think it's that opposite feeling of maybe it's the empty nester. And again, I'm not an empty nester yet, but it's like that kid for the last time shut the door and they're going off to college or they're going to a different, and it's like, now what are we going to do? And it's such a life-changing thing because it was their identity. It was their life. It was their business. It's their legacy. It's their life's work. And when that's gone, it's not an easy transition. Like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go play basketball at the Y. It really takes some time to really think about what you're going to do next. And that's why I applaud you for putting this podcast together. Because if anybody can listen to this is the stuff that's going to help a business owner truly through the wholesale versus just getting a number, but then, life not being fun for them after the fact.
The thought that comes to mind is like, I mean, they're so good at running the business and they have disciplines and they bring in specialists and so on. It's almost like you need to have a pre-retirement game plan or discipline, like the client that says, I'm going to go to Florida and play golf. You go, well, you've been to Florida? No. Do you play golf? No. Or I recently talked to a guy, he said, yeah, I want to fly. And I said, you ever flown a plane before? No. You've taken a lesson to see if you like it flying with you. And so a lot of that stuff, I think it has to do with somewhere along the line, pre-frame what you're going to do post-exit and try to go do some of those things. I mean, if you really think you're going to fish that much, and I think there's a gap here on what people are, planning around. Do you see folks that, you've got the circumstance, the owner's ready to go and this and that and the other, and, they've done it for decades. What would be the role of the one person that would advise that particular previous business owner? What would they do?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I didn't even know this existed. So I went to I think it was EPI summit and saw them there and talked with them. People have, when you run your business, you have your operating system that you run your business on, your business operating system. It's really creating your life operating system. And
Mhm.
it's almost like a life coach or retirement coach and they do a lot of what's in my workbook, but they dive deeper is, what brings you joy, what brings you happy, what brings you passion, and really helping you peel back the onion of, who are you without the business. And ideally you're doing that before you sell the company. That's our goal at Cornerstone as part of our process. But most do not. Most of us makes all I care about is getting Bob the most money or whatever, whatever's important to him, and I get a fee and we're gone and you're on your own. But we try to step back earlier of make sure the lifestyle numbers make sense, make sure they understand what they're going to do next. And that's really the difference between what we call a transaction of, yeah, I sold my company for something, probably left money on the table, have a woulda, shoulda, could have, regret, in a legacy level deal where I got to, I prepared for the sale. It was a proactive process. I knew I got multiple offers. I had a whole deal team around me. I limited my risk. I put the risk back on the buyer, not on me. I got to choose who my successor was, culture fit, whatever else it might be, and I know what I'm going to do next. So that legacy level deal of excited going to that next best chapter versus reacting to everything. I'm reacting that it's not fun anymore. I'm reacting to selling. I'm reacting to buyers. And it's just two completely different routes. And one's gut wrenching with sleepless nights, and the other one's I'm just initiating on this plan that I put together with some really good people around me that are looking out for my best interest. And it's unfortunate that the majority at least start going down the path of reactive. Well, I'll do this myself. I'll call my competitor. I'll give it to my kids. And many times that is not, those two options might be the two worst options, in out of all the 10 plus options that are out there, and, tens of tens when you multiply how you could kind of weave some of them together. But yeah, I would say it's that life planner. What the financial planner is super important because you need to know what kind of lifestyle you can live. Because once you sell the golden goose, once that bell is rung, you can't unring the bell. So you got to have your financial planner, your tax people truly understanding what kind of lifestyle you can live. And then it's really helping someone that can help you figure out what is that purpose going to be in your second, your next chapter.
We've covered a lot of the waterfront. And we could talk a while. I think
Yeah.
there's probably a topic or a question that I didn't touch on and didn't ask you that I should have. That's of concern, or if you wanted to take and pass on a piece of wisdom we haven't covered yet. Is there anything on your mind that we should cover or talk about?
We covered quite a bit. I guess maybe just driving home the point for all the trusted advisors or the business owners watching this is if you are a business owner, if your client is a business owner and they get an unsolicited offer, do not sign the unsolicited offer. Because again, that buyer's job is to get your company for as little as possible and put as much risk on you, the seller, as humanly possible. It is not to pay you fair market or above fair market or anything else that's, because you're a nice guy or a nice lady. So I think, if you get an unsolicited offer, if you start talking to a buyer, then they have interest to reach out to someone like Cornerstone that can help understand, what is the real market analysis telling you? What is that real value of your company? And I can tell you, all I can tell from our experience is in 6 years, the unsolicited offer has never been more than what we think the real market value is. And then typically when we bring multiple buyers together with POMO, we're getting even more than that. Our average is about 20% premium over the benchmark where other companies sell for because of bringing all those buyers together. So I just think and it happens every day. Like in our study, 55% of people in that study, and again, these are business owners from 5 to 100 million in revenue, but been in business for decades. Typically, 55% said if they got an unsolicited offer that they assumed was reasonable. Now, again, over 60% of those people have never ever had any kind of evaluation done or RMA ever, so they have no idea what the heck their company's worth. But if they assumed, which we all know what that stands for, that their value was reasonable, they would sell and not talk to anybody like us, not talk to anybody doing valuations, not talk to anybody. They just want to get the deal done. And that's scary because again, this is your life's work. And in the one deal I presented, it was a double 100% increase from the biggest company or over 20% or over $20 million. Think of what you could do, the impact that you could have with $20 million to your family, friends, your church, your community, any causes that you want to be a part of. And it's just insane. And that's what we want to do. And again, it's not all about money, but to be able to go out on your terms, The only way you're ever going to do that is if you get multiple offers. You tell the right story to a group of buyers that are the right buyers. You put no asking price, and you run a process to get all the offers at one time. And if you don't do that, you're going to have regret. You're going to have money on the table. The worst story I've ever heard, and now this was through a financial advisor. I was not firsthand on this, but the most egregious story I've ever heard is a gentleman sold he had a digital marketing company, and he was doing some really cool stuff. And this big P firm came in and said, "Hey, we'll give you $10 million for your company." Went to his financial advisor and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And he's like, "I don't know. Go talk to an M&A firm." He's like, "I don't want to spend money with an M&A firm. Just what do you think?" He's like, "Well, it's $10 million. You have about $100,000 worth of assets, and they're giving you $10 million because it's all goodwill." He goes, "You know what? I think I'm going to get a good deal. I'm going to do the deal." So he does the deal. He thinks he won. A year and 1 day later, and the only reason they waited a year and 1 day later was to get capital gains treatment on the sale. They sold the company for $150 million. Now, I can tell you that in a year, in 366 days, they did not create $140 million of value. That I can guarantee you. They stole that thing and knew they could plug it into something on a nationwide or international basis and just blew the thing up huge. And again, I haven't seen it that bad before, but I multiple times have seen it double. We get double the value, over 100% more than what they offered. We just talked to a chemical company, and we thought they got offers at 32 million, I think was the one offer, and our RMA came in at 54 million. And when they said they're thinking about working with Cornerstone, guess what the buyer's first words were? "What's it going to take for you not to sign with Cornerstone?" Exactly verbatim what the last one said. And again, after they said this is their highest best offer. So I think they bumped it up several millions of dollars just with the threat of going to market. And after they said that was the highest and best deal they could do. So it's the buyers play games, and some are ethical, some are unethical, just like everybody. There's good and bad characters and actors in every space. But you get one chance to sell your company. One chance. And you want to make sure that you do it right. And that's what we're here for. And we're definitely not the fit for everybody. And if we're not the fit for you, we'll help you find somebody that is. That's the promise we give everybody is that's why I built out the alliance, so I could have another 200 M&A advisors to reach out to and refer deals to. So you have the absolute best chance of success, because after 25 years, there's no fee that's worth a reputation. And that's what but I want to be able to leave the world a better place. And the thumbprint that I'm putting on is on this M&A space of helping all these great business owners be able to not only sell their company, but sell it on their terms and go out with zero regrets. So that's why I'm glad I'm on your podcast today, Bob. And just want to continue to spread that message, because people don't know what they don't know, and they should, because you get one chance to do something. What are you good at? Anything, let alone that you've never done before, let alone something that's your largest asset. Most people think of it like giving up a kid for adoption. You don't know what the thing's worth. You've never been through it before, and you don't know where to start or who to talk to. So again, you can see why people don't do well on the end, and that's what we're here to kind of change those numbers up a little bit.
I think about the effort that you put into writing your book. Anybody that's attempted to do so can appreciate the journey, and so for the owner out there that's going like, I don't know if I should do this or not, if they read your book, what do you think the key takeaway is going to be, or the benefit to them of taking the time to read your book, even if they're on the fence? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say reading the book, but the key is to get the workbook as well. So on Amazon, you can go to Finish Strong, Selling Business on Your Terms book, and then type in the same thing and put workbook after it and buy them. You can't bundle them together for whatever reason. We're actually doing a 2.0 version this year that's going to put them both together with some other things that'll come out next year sometime. But I would say this is for someone who wants to sell, tomorrow and try to figure out. This is someone that wants to sell 10 years or more from now. Because the book talks about, it's not just about how to build value. There's plenty of books out there on how to build value and all the different things you can do to build value. And yes, we have some of that in there, but it's all about, when am I going to sell my business? The importance of timing, and when am I going to sell? What's important to me in a deal? What am I going to do afterwards? What are all my options? We talk about 9 or so different options, and the pros and cons of all those options. So the majority of people might not even sell to a third party. That's fine. As long as it works for you, I don't care. I just want people to be educated. So it really is a holistic approach. You'll be educated on what's the process look like? What are the pros and cons of all the options? When does it make sense for you to get out? What's important to you in a sale? Because there's an assessment to take for that. The great things you can get, or the terrible things that can happen if you give it to your son or daughter, transitions to kids. There's several different exercises on that because when you mix money and family, it can get pretty spicy pretty quick. And some people think that's the easiest way. And I guarantee you that will not be the easiest way because there's 6 people in your family. There'll be 6 definitions of what fair looks like in your family. I can assure you that. Seen it too many times. But yeah, I think it's just really the understanding their options, kind of when they're going to get out, what they're going to do afterwards. It's that holistic approach that most people just don't know until it's too late. So that's what I hope they get out. But it's the workbook that where the magic happens because now you're answering reflective questions, you're taking assessments, you're doing different things. It's 50 pages worth of all kinds of cool stuff, and not every exercise will make sense to you, the owner, but there will be a lot of them in there that will. And again, we're here as a resource. So after the book and workbook, or if you have any questions about what's the market like now or what's going on in my industry, we're a phone call or email away, and everything's confidential. We do this for a long time. We understand confidentiality. And we're just here to be a resource for you, or if you're the trusted advisor for your client.
For the business owner that's intrigued and would like to reach out to your organization, how do they find you?
Yeah, our corporate number is 920-436-9890, 920-436-9890, or our website is www.cornerstone and then a hyphen or -business.com. So cornerstone-business.com. Check us out there. They'll talk about who we are, what our values are, what we do, what we don't do, the size of companies we typically work with. And we have a whole resources page that has a white paper on this national study that we've talked about several times. You can download the white paper. There's white papers on the unsolicited offer versus multiple offers with multiple case studies. There's white paper on the RMA. There's all kinds of different articles there for education purposes. I write about 2 to 3 articles every single month just to help put out into the marketplace. So there should be a lot of information there that you can find. And whenever the right time is, we're happy to have a phone call. And doesn't mean just because we have a talk that you're going to do anything. There's no obligation. It's just a matter to help. Our goal is to help educate every business owner the best we can. So whenever they make the decisions, they're making well-informed decisions.
Well, Scott, this has been a joy. I appreciate you sharing your time and expertise with us. And I just think the message is not out enough, and I hope this is a good step in that direction. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
We'll do it. And for everybody else out there, this is the Exit Series. If you know of a founder who's sold or is about to, or a broker who's seen it, or an attorney who's been across the table, make sure and send them this episode to them and subscribe wherever you listen. We'll see you next time.